Welcome back, everyone. Will Wilkinson here. We had a little glitch there with the YouTube stream. I think Michael, our tech genius, has got that ironed out. I'm moderating the Seattle conference, Architects of the New Paradigm, 6th annual conference. This one is on the subject of mind gaming. And today I have one of our presenters there, George Kavassilas, down in Australia, speaking to us. Welcome, George.
Hey, Will. Thank you for having me back. It's really, I think this is going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun up there. And just looking at your bio and your history of unusual experiences, which you've kind of put into your book, Our Universal Journey, sounds like you're going to do a very fascinating presentation. Your lecture is entitled The Ecosystem of Creativity. Let's start there. What do you mean by that term?
Yeah, what I mean by that term is that everything that is living has an existence, and that existence is usually nested inside of a reality. So what I've come to realize is that our own creative process is an extension of who and what we are. And just as we have an ecosystem that we require the ecosystem to be nourishing. We require the ecosystem to be supportive. It needs to be in harmony with our existence, with our needs, our requirements, and that supportive nature. If I can use the analogy, and you have a plant behind you, and I always use this analogy of gardening, or if you have a plant, if you put a plant in the wrong position, then an inappropriate ecosystem, then it requires extra energy, extra resources, extra water, extra nutrients. It struggles. And then even if it's struggling, if it doesn't die, you know, a lot of plants eventually just will wither and die. It usually has a very unhealthy growth habit, and it doesn't go very well. But then you take that plant and you put it in its appropriate ecosystem, then all of a sudden it's thriving. So it's a similar analogy. So when we are expressing our creativity, we need to understand that that is an extension of us, and therefore we are basically, it's like an energetic incarnation into a reality. So our creativity is an expression and a living construct unto itself. And so like we are living in a particular ecosystem, we need to understand our creative process needs an appropriate ecosystem for it to thrive, for it to be successful.
Let me ask you, George, about the phenomena of conferences themselves, because you and I will both be at this conference in Seattle in March. There's so much stuff that's offered online these days, but I find that the environment provided by a live conference where, you know, you're body to body with other people actually creates more potential for deep change and deep revelation. Do you agree with that?
I fully agree, because I run courses that are in person and I run courses that are online. And I usually say to people with the online courses that they're a slower process over several weeks. And then my in-person version of the same course is compressed over 4 to 5 days. So the people that come, so I call one tortoise medicine and I call the other one hair medicine. And people that usually do the online one are really fascinated and excited about coming along to the live one and experience that full immersion in that energy, which with a large group of people then creates such a beautiful ecosystem and environment once again. And I think this is what I'm excited about coming to the AMP conference, is because it's people who are really interested in creating the new reality moving forward. And I'm really excited about that ecosystem.
Well, and you know, the thing you and I have both heard at conferences is often that the best part of the conference is not the presentation. It's the relationships, it's the conversations over lunch. What's unique about AMP is that we feature that. It's not a kind of after the fact. It's something that we really put front and center, the connecting. So it's actually more co-creating.
Yeah, it is. And the connections, and what I find too at conferences and events that I facilitate globally, is that we are coming across and reconnecting with, it's a familiar term, it's called soul family, or it's just ancient friendships that, You know, you can look at a person in this world at this time, in this incarnation, and just instantly recognize someone that you have physically not crossed paths with, but all of a sudden you're feeling that familiarity of an old ancient friendship.
Well, what do you think that is? Because I think we all have felt that. What is that? What's your view on what are we feeling actually?
Yeah, my take on this is uh, the universe is a huge paradigm of reality. It is colossal in nature, and we are. It has to do with the essence of who we are as a, not just a humanity, which is the species we've incarnated into, but the nature of our being beyond our humanity. And we are multidimensional beings. The universe is a multidimensional construct, and the nature of reality is really vast. And so we have had experiences with people and what we call people in this world, and a spirit, a consciousness, and a soul in other dimensions, in other worlds, in other lifetimes, in previous lives in this world. And it's a really fascinating and very, very adventurous life in this universe.
Well, let me pose what I know is a difficult question, but I know you're up to it. How do you personally, and this would relate to listeners and viewers too, but how do you reconcile your altered state experience, because clearly you're having it, with living in the world the way it is? Because it's often the re-entry, for instance, after a conference is tough. And, we're all familiar with great epiphanies that may not last. The glow fades, and then, there's the workshop junkies who have to go back to the next workshop. Just asking you personally, how do you live in both worlds? How do you sustain this kind of intergalactic, multidimensional perspective in your living experience day to day, making breakfast, driving somewhere, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, exactly that. And so the way I actually do that is have a really better understanding of myself as a being and my relationship. So the relationship I'm actually having with Mother Earth, the planet that we have chosen to come and have an incarnational experience upon. So each one of us is having a very, very unique relationship with that living sentient being.
Mhm.
And it's the same with the solar system, and it's the same with the galaxy and the universe. So it's not, I've got a Georgism, and the Georgism is, it's not rocket science, it's relationship. And when we start bringing everything back to the simplistic nature of the relationships we're having, conscious, co-creative relationships with the realities and the prime creators of these realities, then we begin to understand the nature of our existence in this world. Because the knowledge, the information that we require to better understand our existence in this world resides in the unified field of love between us and our mother planet. Inside that relationship is all of that knowledge. And it's really as simple as relaxing back into that. So it's not something we have to force the issue to create or perform rituals to make happen. It's something that actually already exists. And all we need to do is relax into it.
Well, George, what I'm loving about what you're saying is that it's access is available to all of us.
Absolutely.
Hey, we don't need to go through a guru, for instance, although there's much to learn from people who've been on the path longer and farther than we have. But say a little bit about access, because people meditate. There's all kinds of processes for accessing supernatural states. I get from what you're saying that it's actually just natural, that this is our innate state. But how do you recommend accessing it and staying there?
Yeah, and I'm still a work in progress. So I'm in the process of reconnecting more and more each day, substantiating my natural relationship with these, foundational intelligences of these realities. And what I do want to share with anybody who's listening to this, and it really comes down to, it is so simple, it is so clear, it is invisible to most. Okay. What happens is we get caught up in this notion because of the narratives that have entered into our societal constructs, that we are lesser than, that we are no good, that we are lowly, pathetic humans who squabble and fight amongst ourselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's this really interesting cosmopolitical narrative that's entered into this planet. to diminish us. So once we begin to understand, now hang on, naturally we're actually something much greater than that, because we're so much more. And the truth of the nature is, all we need to do is just relax into the most simplistic nature of them all, and that is that relationship. And then we are able to actually realize more of ourselves. We see the layers within ourselves, because that relationship is the core of our existence here.
Right.
And when we relax into that, then we begin to see all the outer layers. So the core, meaning the most inner, deepest relationship of our existence in this world, is that relationship. So all the layers beyond that, we begin to realize that, relaxing into the heart soul essence, we see the layers of consciousness, all the different layers of the mind that are here. And I'm going to be explaining that in my presentation, so people can get really clear about what has happened to human consciousness and why we are behaving the way we're behaving. And once we understand that and get really clear about that, we're able to observe all the different layers that are in this space. And this space is the interface of how this emanating outwardly, creating our construct here, requires this as the interface module to communicate with others and reality. So depending on what you put into this space here will depend on what lenses you put over the perception of reality. So it's about being quite careful about what you put into this space here.
Right, no kidding. Well, I'm fascinated by the title of your intensive. You'll be doing a Sunday afternoon intensive for a smaller number of the participants, reality management. And putting those two words together in itself is interesting. Talk a little bit about this, because I know that people coming are going to want to take away tools for managing their reality. So what can people expect who come to your intensive?
Yeah, so reality management, the foundation of that, once again, is these relationships and getting clear about the what's happening to our field of consciousness. Once we start getting more of that clarity, then we can enter into, how do we actually implement our creative process? How do we actually understand how to navigate our way better through this reality? For example, if I want to create something like we do on the internet here, I want to be respectful to the fact that I'm entering into a reality that someone else has created, and I'm visiting that space, but I'm also have permission to create in that space. And so there are respectful parameters, like if I come to your home, Will, I want to respect the fact that I'm in your home. And I'm not going to come in and try and take over or try and, belligerently just impose my way around your home. And so a lot of people are missing the point as to what co-creation and the essence of co-creation actually means. And once we begin to understand our world, the planet, and also the societal construct, and yes, there's all the controlling factions, there's all this unfortunate powers and elite and all these things that are going on in our world, which I'm very much aware of and I talk about regularly. However, how do we go about creating in amongst all of this chaotic storm that is emerging on the planet? Because a creative process right now being expressed in this world is beginning to get more challenging, because we're being corralled into an augmented state. And there are those of us who are not interested in that path, but are more interested in a more balanced future between technology, nature, and humanity. And that is very real and very possible outcome if we just understand the bigger picture and then make the choices according to our desires from the heart.
Well, George, it seems that much of what you're speaking of must relate to identity and how we see ourselves. You often hear using the term create. We can create in this space, and we can create. The conference is about creativity and innovation, so this is right on the money for the purpose of our event. Can you say a little bit more about identity? Because I sense that there's a whole world here to explore of who am I? Am I a thing? Am I a wave, particle, wave? Love to hear your perspective on that. This is not a question that's easily answered, but let's take a few minutes on it.
Well, thanks for asking that, Will. This is my passion. What you just asked is my deepest passion throughout my life because of, from a very young age, I've had these otherworldly experiences in many ways, both interdimensional, extraterrestrial, benevolent, and malevolent. It's been quite a wild ride of a lifetime. And what I've come to know through all these various groups and all these different whether the, you were talking about ETs, whether we're talking about ancient beings, whether we're talking about interdimensionals or we're talking about gods, it just all of it, it's just really comprehending how this all fits and where does it all fit. So my deep passion in life has always been the primordial questions: who are we? Where do we come from? What are we doing here? And to a degree, where are we headed? Because
Right.
I don't want to spoil the movie either. So
No spoilers.
so there's the fun and the mystery is
Right.
what I've chosen to embrace rather than obsessing over needing to know what's coming.
Mhm.
Okay, because that's what distortion in the ego actually does. So
Well,
yeah.
uh, I'd like to, we just have a couple of minutes here, and I'd like to give you the opportunity, George, to address our audience sort of one-on-one. We've got
Mm,
people watching who are, interested in the theme of the conference, creativity, innovation. March 21st, 22nd is available on their calendar. They are in Seattle or they can get there. They're wondering about whether they should come or not. When they're
mm,
there, those who do come, they'll be wondering which intensive to go to,
okay.
right? And there's like choices, and they're tough choices. I'd love
Mm.
you to just, spend a minute or two at the end of our interview here, addressing people and giving them an invitation. If someone chooses to walk through the door, sit down with you in your intensive, what can they expect to experience? Experience being the key word. So maybe give us a little entrainment right now, a little mini experience of being in the intensive with you, if you will.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks for that opportunity, Will. Um, okay, so the area which I specialize in with all of my courses is helping people to remember. So I'm not teaching anyone in this context anything new. The actually opening sentence, the opening phrase in the content of my course, main course, is this is a remembrance. And it's about us actually remembering who we are, where we come from, and what we're doing here. As we're in a time in human evolution where we're awakening from the slumber of the veil of amnesia.
Mm.
And as this is occurring, there are energies here that want to apprehend our awakening process and steer it in a particular direction. And I'm really passionate about our humanity awakening unto its own sovereign, liberated self. And when we do awaken, we begin to realize that we're natural creator beings. We are creating every moment of every day. This morning, I created this cup of tea, okay? I create lots of things. I create webinars, I create courses. I'm co-creating this with Will and Michael. So naturally, and I'm not talking about claiming to be God. So I just got to make that distinction 100% clear that we're not claiming to be gods and all of that stuff. We're actually just naturally, organically acknowledging and to a degree celebrating our natural creator abilities. And one thing I've come to know through my entire journey with all of these experiences that I've had is that we are so much more than we have been led to believe,
Yeah.
and that we are sovereign, infinite creator beings, and understanding that we have chosen to come to this world and enter into a co-creative process, which is going to help actually transition this reality and the human race and the natural environment out of this situation we're in. And it actually requires our creative process in order for us to transition out of this mess we're in.
What a wonderful invitation, George. That's just so hopeful. Thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
You're most welcome, Will. It's been a pleasure.
My name is Will Wilkinson. I'm moderating the 6th annual conference, Architects of the New Paradigm. This year it's in Seattle, March 21st and 22nd. I've been talking with George Kavassilas from Australia. He's one of the presenters. Welcome all of you to check out the website, anpconference.com, and see if this is the right place for you to be to turbocharge your creativity and innovative abilities. thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see some of you at the conference in March. Thanks again, George.
Thanks, Will.